Kirby.
Hey everybody, welcome to Love and Reload, the voice of the relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, and I'm so blessed and honored to be here with my friend Evelyn Dy-Sharma from Blueground. Hey Evelyn.
Hey, Ben.
And Mike Kim from Some Neat Place. Hey Mike.
What's going on, Ben?
Mike, Some Neat Place has to be the coolest name I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Real quick,
Thank
just
you.
for people out there that may not be familiar, you want to just let us know what Some Neat Place is?
Yeah, it's a place where you can feel safe. But then the vision for some of these places is that we can connect the world through one kind act a day, just bringing kindness to the forefront, making it cool again.
That's what's up. That's what's up. Yeah, today we're going to talk about Asian hate. We're going to talk about experiences of Asian Americans. We're going to talk about kind of what's going on, how we can be involved, how we can be allies to our non-Asian friends, and just kind of understanding the stories of people out there. So I want you to get involved in the comments right now if you're watching. I want to know who you are, where you are, what you're up to right now. Throw it in the comments. Also, if you have questions, this is an opportunity and a safe place, which Mike just kind of described. This is also a safe place for us to really talk about things and hopefully leave a little more enlightened. I'm looking forward to the insights and the experiences that we're going to talk about today. We've got people tuning in right now. We've got Jody from Wisconsin. What's up, Jody? Cindy Salter. What's up, Cindy? Got some Mexican food with Cindy coming up. Super stoked about that. Tim Quirk. Can't wait to learn more about this topic from Western New York. Yeah, and I'd love to know your experiences. If you're in the comments right now, if you're watching, I'd love to know your experiences with Asian hate. Have you seen it? Have you been a victim of it? Is it something that you participated in when you were a kid and were dumb and didn't really understand what was going on? I mean, I think that we have to also be honest about what is our role in these things. We've unpacked a lot of this as regards to our African American brothers and sisters and stuff, but we haven't necessarily, and what is our role? And as a white person, I'm dealing with this and kind of working through this as well. And kind of one of the things that came out last year was white silence is white violence, and understanding our complicitness when we choose not to really do anything and not to be a part of the conversation. But kind of taking it from there, Evelyn, you want to talk a little bit about how you and I connected on this and why this is, a passion of yours?
Yeah, so I have been posting a lot about Asian hate just because I think there's been a huge rise since COVID. Just for brief background, I think there's 150% rise of Asian attacks from the past year. Nearly 4,000 reported cases of just violent acts. And, for myself as an Asian person, I did it because I wanted to raise awareness and use my platform to raise awareness. I also have a 4-year-old kid that I want to change the world and make sure that she's safe when she grows up, because I can't be forever guarding her. She's going to go off and be an adult, and I want to make sure that she's safe because I know that we can be better than this. And thank you so much for reaching out to me and, making this my platform to share experiences and what we can do.
Yeah, and Evelyn, honestly, I've known you for a while, and we've kind of collaborated in different ways. And I saw you out there. I saw some other people out there that I was friends with. And I felt like you guys were beating the drum, but you felt like you were beating it alone in some ways. And I feel like people were respectful. I think people were supportive, but I didn't feel like people were really standing next to you maybe and talking about these things. And I was important for me that people not feel alone when they're going through this, and that we somehow find a way to be allies. And I guess, Mike, I would love to know kind of maybe if you could help us understand your perspective here, Mike, and how what's been your journey of recent? And we'll go back, but of recently with this.
Just like everyone else, it's been traumatizing in a way where, when you flip on the news or you go on Instagram, you go on social, and there's a new event, and we still haven't unpacked the event from yesterday. So we're just compounding these hate crimes, and it's heavy on me. And there's days, to be honest, where I'm trying to brand somebody a place where it's like I believe in kindness, but there's days, Ben, where kindness is the last thing on my mind, and I'm angry, I'm frustrated, I'm hurt, and it brings up a lot of memories from my childhood, ever since kindergarten, and there's memories that are just popping up, and it's been traumatic for me because I think subconsciously I was packing these feelings away and these memories because they weren't the best. and I want to remember my childhood as a good one. But going through a lot of trauma, then and seeing what's happening out in the world, it's hard because the narrative is that this could be my mother, this could be my aunt, this could be my brother, and it's so alarming because it's real and it's happening every single day. And you know, for me, it's what can I do? How do I lean in, and how do I be an advocate for just not Asian Americans, but you know, the ultimate goal for so many places too is like, it's how do we unify us together against hate, not against each other? And it's been pitted against us. And racism doesn't wear a skin color, doesn't wear a type. It's everyone that has suppressed feelings, or it's from old trauma and these old stories that are constantly just being shared. We can rewrite that. And just like what Evelyn was mentioning too, we have a chance here to correct some of these wrongs, but then we have to give history its place. And it's been 400 plus years of systemic racism. And I think we really need to honor that and honor all the work that's been done and figure out a creative way to move forward and get in front of this hate, because it's hard. It's really hard to watch every single day. There's something new that's happening. And it's like, you would think they would slow it down, but it's only getting worse. And it's hard to watch.
And Ben, to your point, I think there are days when you do feel alone. And I feel like there's a lot of, you know, I have a lot of Asian friends, and it's us holding each other up. It's us checking in on each other. Hey, you doing okay? It's not a good feeling to go into a huge city there's a huge Asian population, and my friends are carrying, you know, weapons to protect themselves.
Do you, I mean, you again, you provided some statistics. There's just so much here. Honestly, I'm listening to you and it hurts my heart, you know, and I feel your trauma and what you're saying. And I'm trying to kind of imagine, I'm trying to put myself in that situation and how I feel. Do you feel like this is a problem that has gotten worse? Has it gotten worse since you were maybe kids? Because I always think about kids, you know, being a kid, you know, kind of kids are really mean. And you know what I'm saying? And like I'm thinking back on my childhood, because I used to see Asian hate when I was a kid. I would see mimicry. I would see big kids picking on one another. I would see, you know, stereotypes. I would see, you know, I would see all that stuff. I haven't seen it as much as an adult, but then when I turn on the news, I see it like vividly, right? And I guess I want to know from your perspective, you know, do you feel like we're heading in the wrong direction right now, or what's going on right now?
I think the past year with COVID, you know, it's been tagged as the Chinese virus. A lot of it has to do with that. When I lived in San Francisco, and this was 3-4 years ago, I got on the BART and this woman started talking to me, and I don't engage with people at BART just because I just don't do it. And she started yelling at me in the parking lot saying, "Go back to China," like yelling and just following me. And I froze. And at that point I was just like, okay, I didn't know what to do. And there was a kind man who was behind me. He started yelling at her like he'd leave her alone.
Why do people think that's okay? Like what I don't understand. Like, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of rhetorical, but maybe there's an answer. Why do people think that that's okay? And what is the objective in even engaging that behavior?
I think there's some of it has to do with ignorance. I do think some of it has to do with fear. I think a lot of people are mean or mean-spirited, or they hate because there's fear there somewhere. You know, there's this whole model minority myth that Asians have jobs, you don't have to worry about them. They're okay because they have jobs, they have families, they're fine. You don't ever have to worry, but that's not true. And
I'm sorry, go ahead, Evelyn.
No, and I think that myth has just pinned, and Mike, I don't know if you feel this, but that myth has pinned every single race against each other.
Yeah, there's a beautiful storyteller. Her name is Chimamanda Adichie, and I watched her TED Talk, and her TED Talk was around the dangers of a single story. And it resonated with me so well, because this is 10 years ago that she did this. And it's still true today. When you have one single story that's been displayed and just constantly just drilled into our head by, our president of the United States at the time. And without knowing how that power, that single coined word or that phrase of kung flu or the China virus, and the way he said it was mocking and ridiculing at the same time. And if you don't understand a point of view, you really don't understand like what we're going through and how that single story, that single narrative can really impact someone's thinking or their education. If they have never really had Asian friends, maybe they start to believe that this virus came from Asia. And so they're walking down the street and they push their kids to the other side of the street so they don't interact with you, without trying to be curious about, is this true? Or, is there something else here that we can kind of unfold and just really understand? But when someone of that power really relates this message, it's hard to combat that. And there is a ripple effect that we are feeling right now. And it's to not own your or have accountability to what you're saying. It's very hurtful. And just case in point for me, I'm remembering these words, these hateful slurs, and they almost feel like it just happened yesterday. And that's the power of those words. I remember verbatim. And it's just, if we can teach each other differently, we can start educating, like what Evelyn was saying, things can change. But those words don't sting, they cut, and we're feeling it right now. And you can see the systemic pattern it is a huge ripple effect that it's causing on society right now.
I just want to encourage everybody. Thank you so much, Mike, for sharing that. And thank you so much, Evelyn, for sharing your experience. I can't imagine how hard that is. And I don't, I so respect you doing that. And I don't want to make you relive, those traumas. So I appreciate you sharing those things. I want to ask people in the comments here. I want to hear what you think. I want to hear your thoughts on this. I want to hear your support for Mike and for Evelyn and for our Asian brothers and sisters. I also would love to hear your ideas about how we can stop Asian hate. What are your ideas on systemic racism? How do we combat that? How do we turn the tide on that? Because it does feel like it's getting worse. It feels like in 2021 things should be getting better. We should be more enlightened. Yep. We have more information. We can Google things. There should be less misinformation, and somehow it feels like it's plaguing us more than ever. So I'd love your ideas in the comments, and I'd love it from our panelists too. Let's just read a few people checking in here. We got Erica Burton checking from Ohio. What's up, Erica? It's good to see you. Janet Turner checking in there I know she's in Florida. We got Stacy. Appreciate you, Stacy, producing the show every day. Shabina, hey, Shabina from London. Oh. Yeah, what's up? Tim Quirk, hey, and I appreciate these comments too, because I think we have to evolve. We all have to just get better. Wherever we're at today, we have to get better. Tim says, I've learned that things that seem like harmless jokes when I was a kid has maybe led to a disrespect and mistreatment of Asian people. I appreciate that. I respect that, Tim. Thank you for saying that.
And just I guess to touch on that, I think it also comes a lot from education, but it also comes from the home. So if you can teach your kids that everyone is human, regardless of what color, what they look like, and to treat everyone with respect, it absolutely comes from home. And I think, establishing those roots.
What do you think about the idea of not only maybe moving? So there's treating everyone the same, treating people equally. There's that thought, but then there's also the thought of celebrating differences, and the thought that, and I'm more of a fan of the latter, just to be honest with you, just because it's like equality kind of blends everybody together, and it kind of gets that one story kind of vibe kind of coming back and everything. But in reality, I think we almost can really appreciate one another more when we respect the things that those people are bringing to the table culturally from a heritage standpoint. What are your thoughts on maybe how we can reframe this into celebrating our differences?
I think it's really learning about each other. I think the world's a better place because we are so different. We all grow by learning about each other's cultures, each other's nuances, and each other's quirks.
Mike, what do you think the approach is there, Mike, when it comes to discussing differences?
It's about leaning in, and there's a concept when, I'm a huge advocate of therapy. I think it needs to be destigmatized. But then there's this concept of my therapist. I love this guy to death because he told me this one day. was like, there's a thing called kind curiosity, when you're leaning in to be curious, but then when you're leaning in with that, it's with kindness.
Yes.
And when you're kindness, when you're reaching in with curiosity that's kind, like if your fiance or your boyfriend, your girlfriend did something that on the surface level pissed you off, maybe they're going through something. So if you approach it with curiosity, but with kindness as a construct, as a foundation, you're not angry, you're not assuming the worst, and you're not projecting some of the old biases that you have or experiences that you may have unpacked or you haven't yet unpacked, and you're leaning in with that curiosity. I think that's a strong one. And telling more stories. And I partnered with my buddies at Comics, and I love those guys to death too, because they tell raw, unedited stories, but this production is just amazing. If you guys want to watch some of those stories that we produced on 6 Asian perspectives, you can go to @Convicts or @SomebodyPlace on our Instagram. But we started curating, like it was so interesting how all of our racial slurs and the taunts and everything else was very similar. And what our age ranged from young 20s all the way to the 40s. But we had the same experiences, but different perspectives on how we saw it. And super fascinating. But I think storytelling and being more curious about one another, so that we can have greater color to celebrate those differences. Because I think with nearly 8 billion people in this world, we have room to tell 8 billion stories.
Yes,
We have room for that, and we should adore that, and we should accept it and embrace it with love instead of this hate, which it does nothing for us as a community.
You know, I want to go back to Tim's comment real quick. And Francine, they're interested in learning more and how we can share more inclusive love. I want to go back to Tim's comment real quick here, because I think that this is interesting, right? Because we've all been not our best selves, right? And so if we've engaged in this, how do we maybe this is probably not even a fair question, honestly. But I think that there's people we need to heal. In order to heal, we need to move past what we've done, you know, and I think we need a way to process that, move on from that, kind of apologize, maybe seek forgiveness. You know, I don't know, you know, but have you seen have you seen this? I mean, help me out here. I'm kind of struggling here, but have you seen how do we move as white people who may be part of the problem to some degree, a lot or a little bit? How do we move?
I think it's really by helping advocate for Asians. It's standing up when you see people who are being victimized. You know, there was a person, I don't know if you saw it, Ben, a 65-year-old woman in New York was going to church and she got kicked. And the person just sat there and watched and closed the doors of a building. So by helping her and just standing up for her, I think that means a lot to us. And I think that's really repenting for whatever you've done in the past, just being an advocate. If you see something, speaking up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Ben, if I can touch on this too. Oh,
please,
sorry.
Please, Mike.
So Tim, I appreciate you commenting on that. Because what it seems like when it is a harmless joke, even as a parent, if you start buying into some of this hateful rhetoric, which seems like it's on the surface level for you, may not mean anything. If you can try to seek perspective, again, trying to be curious about what other people may feel. And I've heard this so many times where it's like, hey, grow up, it's all good, it's not that hard, it's not that bad. Or, hey, I've gotten that even from other Asian Americans. I've gotten that my entire life. I just sweep it under the rug, or just brush it off my shoulder. It doesn't matter. Just be a man almost, you know? And so, sorry, Evelyn.
No, I think, but that's also like the thing I think that's one thing about Asians. They do brush it off the rug because they don't want to cause problems. And I think that's one thing that people need to understand is, especially those who are being attacked now. A lot of those are their generation. They've been taught not to say anything and just to go with the flow and not to cause a scene and just blend in. So I think really knowing
like that's changing though, right, Evelyn? It seems like people have had enough. It seems like, you know, people are standing up and saying we're not taking this anymore.
But if you look at it though, it's the ones that we're not taking it anymore. It's mostly a younger generation. The ones that are being attacked, are the grandmother in San Francisco that was 73, the woman that was 65 in New York. They would rather not say anything because they've been taught to be silent. And I think now it's like their grandchildren, their kids are now speaking up because it is enough. You don't want to walk around and fear that you're going to get attacked or you're going to get hurt, or I don't want to have to worry about my friends or my mom when she comes to visit, that she can't go anywhere by herself because she's going to get attacked.
Wow. Let's see, we got a few more comments here as well. Keep those comments coming. I'd love to hear your stories, your thoughts, your perspectives as well. What do you think about how we can stop Asian hate? This is a great conversation here. Really enjoying this. Thank you so much for having this with us here. I know it's not easy, but I'm glad we're doing it. Elizabeth, hi. Evelyn, Mike, it's good to see you. Carolyn, hi from Central Wisconsin. Would love to hear your thoughts on how we can better support our expats from Asia who are processing not only the recent events but life in the different countries. So Mike, we're in the global mobility industry, right? It's our job to bring people, here and all over the world. Right. So what happens when we bring people here and they run into this?
I can attest to that. I moved here 7 years ago from Singapore with my husband, who's never lived in the US except for a couple of years ago. And he was in shock. I was in shock. I think it's a lot of understanding from companies. I think, the settling in orientation, but it's also a lot to do with your colleagues, having a support system for them, having a safe space to talk to, hey, this is happening. Having an HR person be like, okay, who can I run to if I'm experiencing this? What do I do? Having that resource for your employees to have a safe space to talk.
We talk about cultural training on the show. We talk about, DSPs. We talk about all the things that we do to help people settle in and experience as little friction and facilitate their successful transition as much as possible. I mean, is there anything you could do to prepare somebody for running into like hate crimes, like just walking down the street, going to work, whatever? Like,
I don't think you can be prepared for it. I don't think you can be prepared for it. I think it's more of what happens after and how you can support them.
Is there something we should be doing from a duty of care standpoint to protect people?
That's difficult to answer, Ben, because I think you can't really control everyone, I mean, do you put everyone in a bubble? It's just...
Yeah, I mean, yeah, right. I mean, because, we look at some countries, right? When we relocate transferees there, right? I mean, you give them a driver, you give them, it's
exactly.
like, I mean, is that where we're at? I mean, it seems, I don't know, I'd say no, but that's my perspective. I don't know. I mean, what do we need to do to protect people in a way that, I don't know. Interesting question.
Ben, I do love the idea that we need to amplify and continue to be a catalyst for the younger voice, because they are going to be the next generation that becomes the elderly in the future. And they are amplifying their voices. They are standing up and they are trying to find ways. And I think the creative solutions around how do we get around this and how do we get in front of racism. And I think it's so much to unpack. It's so much history that we have to really understand where it's coming from. And to also give every person, and we shouldn't be on this this comparison where we're like going, hey, well, my hate crime was a lot worse than you, so you maybe take a back seat on this. I think everyone has their feelings. Everyone should be respected, and we should learn from them. And going to Carolyn's question around how do we support expats better from Asia, I think it's like if you were to, again, going back to perspective, if you're going to Asia, if Carolyn was going to Asia, how would she want to be treated? How would she want, like, if I can't get around, would she want to get someone to just like spew hate or kick her in the face? It's like, no, it's not right. And I think what we're seeing is that shift, and it's a lot of hate that's happening, and it's a lot of trauma. And if we have to really get into the heart of it and understand how we could be better human beings to each other, not just is this bad hate crime or the severity of it. I think everything that we do, every word that we say, it's bad. We need to reverse it. We have to really do that through education and just understanding one another.
Mike, you bring up a great point. I think it totally reframes the entire conversation when you say, how would you feel as an expat, right? If Carolyn or Ben or whomever goes over to, another country, because all of a sudden, just you saying that, like in my gut, I felt a vulnerability. All of a sudden, I'm in a country
Don't know
where
anyone.
I'm one of the only white faces. I don't speak the language, right? I'm vulnerable now. Now to think that there's people out there who I don't know, who I don't see coming, who were out to get me for just and I think I can't hide. I can't hide in the crowd. I can't I'm
Stick
me.
out.
I wear it. We're wearing our vulnerabilities, right? And so, I mean, when you put it like that, Mike, there's another level of urgency that comes just, I feel it.
There was a book about, and she was my ex-roommate in Singapore. She wrote a book because she moved from Austin to Singapore. It's called One White Face. And she worked for a Japanese company and she was that one white face. And she talks about how, she really had to learn the culture and respect it and understand their culture, their differences, and celebrate that. And how do you do that? So she really does go step by step with that. And it's a fantastic book to see it from her perspective of how she took herself and standing out. She's the only white person in a company of 500 and she stood out. So how do you blend in and how do you really immerse yourself in that culture?
Yeah. And I mean, I wonder too, talking about the global mobility aspect of this, I can't help but think, the United States, we speak, we don't usually speak more than one language. A lot of us don't speak more than one language. There's a lot that do, but a lot that don't, right? I mean, when I talk to guests from overseas, France, Amsterdam, even the UK, I mean, they're just, they speak, or Africa, Brazil. I mean, everybody speaks more than one language. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the common insults or whatever that we hear thrown around here in the US, right? Like speak English, right? Which is just kind of ironic on another level because it's from England, but whatever. We use this as a measuring stick of a person's worthiness to be in this country, right? Meanwhile, we're all immigrants and we're talking, we've appropriated a language from another country that we actually ran away from, but whatever. And so I wonder if that doesn't add to it. The fact that we're also just, there's a lot of us, and I'm going to put myself in that bucket just because I'm a white guy that speaks one language. There's a lot of us that are just not very well cultured and not really exposed to a lot of cultures and a lot of languages. Whereas you might go to Europe and you'd be adjacent to a lot of different cultures. Do we have maybe a perfect storm scenario here that creates some of these situations? I mean, do you think that these things are as prevalent in other countries, or do you think that the U.S. is uniquely positioned and susceptible to this kind of perfect storm of hate and Asian hate?
I think it's a little bit more in the U.S. I think there's, in Asia, South Asians sometimes pin against each other. I've seen people make fun of Filipinos make fun of Chinese people. But I think it's all just been swept under the rug because we don't really harm anyone. We don't cause harm. It's microaggressions, but it's not physical harm. When people are dying, when people are being attacked, it's a little bit different. And it's also coming from a president or the former president of the United States. Mm-hmm. He's planted seeds. It's growing. Those seeds are now growing. And that's why we're seeing a lot more of this. And Jody's right about language skills.
Yeah, she's just commenting, about kind of what I was saying about, but going to your point though, Evelyn, going back to your point about the president, right? And so now the president's gone, right? But here the seeds are still growing. Yep. Right. We're dealing with the seeds of discord that were sown over the last several years. And how long is it going to take to reverse that trend? Is it going to take another 4 years? Is it going to, you know what I mean? How do you see an end in sight? What does relief look like?
I think relief is when people start standing up for the Asian people and we rally against each other, like we rally for the same thing. There's no divide. Everyone's seen as equal. When you see someone being abused, you stand up for them. I think that's for me, that's going to be a huge relief when I don't feel like I'm drumming by myself, like what you said. I was alone. And I'm advocating for something, and I'm like, I'm alone. I'm advocating for this by myself, and the only people who are advocating for us are other Asian people.
Which also discredits the argument, right? Because I mean, I've dealt with this with the Black community too, where if they're the only ones talking about rights for African Americans, then it's like, well, why are y'all always playing that card, right? And it's like, so we have to stand with them to validate what they're saying and show that they're not the only ones worried about their welfare and self. Anyway, so but Mike, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, do we see an end in sight, or do we see these seeds continuing to grow despite the change in regime?
Yeah, I think it's going to continue to grow. Unfortunately, I'm not trying to be pessimistic here, but I think it's so deeply rooted. And you're talking about there's all these steps and guides that I see online all the time. It's like, hey, how do you become a better human being? And it's like, oh, here's a 6-week guide. It's like, you're talking about trauma that's built in for 20, 30, 40 years for some people, and you're going to unpack that in 6 weeks. It's not going to happen. And but I do believe through conversation, through more stories, through leaning in with one another to be more vulnerable, to understand one another's perspectives, and listening. Listening is such a hard thing to do because if you don't hear what you want to hear, you start injecting, or you start leading a conversation. And I think that's been very dangerous. And also I've heard some certain things like, even during Black Lives Matter, it's such an important thing for me because I grew up around Latino and Black Americans. And I remember someone telling me, man, I'm just so tired of hearing about BLM or we need all these things. Like, you're young, you didn't go through, the civil rights movement. But when you think about it, it's like, well, imagine how that feels to a Black American when you're saying, I'm tired of hearing this. And it's been about maybe 1.5 years or 2 years. They've been dealing with it for 400 plus years. And so when you see it in perspective, it's so hard. You're almost diminishing the history and just wiping it clean, go, hey, it's 2021, right? It's all good now, right? And it's not. And it's so hurtful. And so when you look at the Asian American experience, what a lot of stuff that we've normalized through decades and decades, and just saying it's okay because we stayed silent. It's, when we go and say we're tired of hearing all this Asian hate stuff, it's like, well, imagine how we feel going through years of torment. Even the small microaggressions, like what Evelyn was saying, we've heard it since kindergarten, and that became a part of who we were, and we hated being Asian. I know I did. And why was that? And why were these kids so cruel to us? And we just wanted to fit in. We just wanted to be kids that just did everything normally like everyone else did. But we were always told how different we were when we got out to the real world. From parents to kids, we're always shown that we would always be different. And then that was probably the most hurtful thing. Leaving my neighborhood, which we had Black, Hispanic, we had all of it, white, we all got along. But when we left that block, the world let us know you are very different.
And that's the thing. I think for me, it's, coming back to the US, it's like when I first moved, it's like, oh, you don't speak with an accent. You speak perfect English. And you don't look Philippine, or like, what are you? I've been called Oriental, and I've told people I'm not furniture. I'm a human being. I'm Asian. I've had friends visit me, and I think this comes from really understanding where you're going and really being curious, as Mike said. They're like, and I'm like, what's in your suitcase? It's so heavy. Like, we're bringing canned goods because the only thing you eat in Asia are dogs. I'm just like, you do know we have McDonald's, and like everything else you have in this country, you probably have in Asia. So it's really leaning in and being curious of where you're going. It's really understanding each other. And it's hurtful to see that, you've lived here, you've done the work, and you're still marginalized, and you don't get the same treatment because of my skin color. I think in Asia, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a huge industry where whitening products, because you want to be as white as you can be. And people buy it because they want to blend in. They want to be white because they don't want to be different.
Yeah, I know in some parts in Korea, like if you're tan, that means you work outside. And so you have a lower class than being inside all day, and you're a little bit more affluent in terms of your your social economic status. So there's that too. But one thing you did mention, Ben, which I really love, is the cultural element of how do we broaden our horizons, because we only see what we see and we only know what we know. We don't know what we don't know. Yeah. And so, you know, I'm not going to get into this conversation about education reform, but we need one. We learn history from one textbook and say this is the source of truth, but there's so many conversations with nearly 8 billion people we can have, and that could tell stories of real life. And I think we need to really reform that. And I'm just on my pedestal, my soapbox here, but if we really want to change the system, let's pay teachers more, because we look at them and say, hey, my kid's coming home and they're being unruly. What are you doing during the day? If we're going to put that much onus on the teachers, let's pay them more. Let's give them more benefits. Let's put therapists in schools. And I think that can start breaking the cycle. And I just, we need to look for better solutions instead of just doing the same things repetitively.
So I have a quick question for you guys, just because I didn't grow up here. In your Asian, like American history, did you learn about Asian history and how Asians played a part in the American history, like in 1800s with that bill was signed? Because I started reading more about this as the crime started rising.
So this is a question about ignorance, so I'll take it. This is, you know, we learned Chinese Americans built the railroads. We learned that they were treated like crap. We learned about putting Japanese in camps, because they were just afraid of, I don't know, spies, or I don't know what they were afraid of. Anyway, so we kind of learned that. It was pretty brief. Pretty brief. I mean, that's kind of what I picked up on. You know, there's a little bit of world history. Dynasties in China. That's pretty much it. Overseas conflicts with the U.S. That's kind of the extent. So I mean, that's probably the extent of what I recall being taught in school regarding Asian Americans and just Asian diaspora.
Yeah, and I think that should be, there should be more highlights to that. What really meant for the Chinese people to build that railway? How did America benefit from that? I think there's pros and cons to every teaching, and you should really teach people what the benefits of that was, and not just say, hey, they just built railroads.
Well, and the fact that Asian people, and it's, I mean, there's also issues, I think, categorizing like just Asian people. Right? I mean, it's like, it's a lot, right? But I mean, 60% of the world's population, I believe, is quote unquote Asian, and definitely underrepresented when we think about, in history books. Now you could argue, well, it's American history, therefore we teach about America, but at least during global history and at least during these things where the scope is outside of the United States, you would think that at least half of what we're learning about would deal with half of the population in the world. So it's still a very Eurocentric education. I mean, to Mike's point, I mean, that's probably an understatement. Elizabeth says we didn't learn a lot about Asian American history. Yeah, ditto. Jody, the U.S. story of racism been at the establishment of this country. We murdered the indigenous Asians. Were tolerated only for cheap labor. We enslaved the Africans. It has always been white was right and different was bad. We cannot pretend that our country was this beautiful thing. It was a great idea, but was only effective if you were white.
And that's the sad part, right? It's that last sentence it was only effective if you were white. And I think we all just have to keep that in mind when these things are happening.
Yeah.
I mean, Jody said it perfectly. Go ahead, Mike.
Oh, sorry, Ben. Go ahead.
No, you please.
No, like even the internment camps back in World War II, I didn't know about that. I didn't read that in history books. I also didn't read a lot of history on these Asian civil rights leaders that were a part of what Malcolm X said, partnered with them and civil rights movements, and we didn't read any of that. It would have been cool as a kid to see this is what I can become. This is the hope that I have. Here's all these global people that are innovating change, and we didn't see that. So my experiences when I opened up that history book was like Genghis Khan or Mr. Miyagi, Daniel LaRusso, and that was my reference point of this is what I can be when I grow up. Yeah, and so that again, what like Evelyn mentioned, the model minority. I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be a lawyer. Or I'm going to be an engineer, and so everyone kind of puts you in that bucket. but we didn't hear those things. And I think if our textbooks would expand the horizon a little bit and broaden that for us, we would have more hope. We would see people that look like us, and this is what we can be, and there's hope there. But there wasn't a lot of history that I remember.
Like soldiers back in World War II, if you weren't American, if you fought for World War II, you were offered citizenship in the US. I mean, I don't think that was ever highlighted in textbooks, and that's why we have a lot of migrants, right?
Interesting. Jody says, no, we did not learn about Asian history. Agree strongly in the education reform. Those items been mentioned were small blurbs in history books. Yeah, very, very small. I mean, think about that just for 1 second, right? Asian internment camps. We're going over to get people out of genocidal camps in Europe, and yet we're putting people in camps on U.S. soil. Like, just mind-boggling, the disconnect there. And the whitewashing of these things that happened, I'm gonna have a question. I'm gonna take from stereotypes that are in my consciousness. The stereotype that Asian Americans are very successful. Going back to kind of the stereotypes you were just talking about, as far as like doctors, lawyers, etc. This stereotype, and therefore it can't be that bad because look how well they're doing. That's kind of the idea. I think that's the notion that's kicked around white circles, right? That's the idea. What are people missing?
There's a whole, again, I think you've said it, you've compartmentalized everyone as Asian, but there's different Asians. There's a sector where the Nepalese and Burmese are 30% below poverty line. You don't see it. It's never mentioned because there is that model minority myth. All Asians are successful. They're geniuses. They are mathematicians, doctors. And I think that's also part of the Asian culture. When you're growing up, you're told, here are the 3 things you can be. I mean, I joke with my daughter. I'm like, here are the 4 things you can be, but just kidding. I say that to her, but it is that your parents don't allow you or don't really respect if you take a career outside of being a doctor, lawyer, vet, or dentist. Those are your 4 options.
Corporate housing.
Yeah. That's a secret one. That's a secret sauce.
You're reframing what people can be.
Right. So it's funny. It's like, even nowadays, I talk to my mom. I'm like, Mom, what do I do? Doesn't know. No clue. No clue. And it's, there's that gap as well. But it's the same thing. It's people think that all Asians are successful. They're not. If you go to Chinatown, you see older generations, there's at least 3 families living in a 1-bedroom apartment. That's why you see a lot of them, collecting cans, because that's their source of livelihood. You don't see that. And no one talks about it.
Mike, thoughts on some of the stereotypes and the danger, maybe, just so we know.
Yeah, I mean, I think we also don't understand. We see a nice house, but we also don't see that they're working 2-3 jobs. We also don't see that they picked up a dictionary knowing 0% of the English language and they picked it up by themselves. We also don't see, this is speaking from my personal experience from my parents growing up, that, we didn't, when my dad passed away last year from cancer too, he lost his battle. I sometimes wonder what life would have been like for us as we're growing up, because he had so much anger, not only from the Vietnam War, but from coming to the United States as immigrants, not learning language. But when he passed, I did this video series with convicts in LA. When we recorded them, I asked my mom a week before, was there any kind of racial stories you guys had? Because I don't really hear you talking about them. Not too much. But here's one simple one. And she told me about this time where one of the jobs, the 2-3 jobs that my parents both had when we were growing up as kids, they were just, like janitor jobs and just line cooks and just basic stuff. And my dad had a dictionary, it was a Korean dictionary, and it had English on there. And he would always ask his managers, please write. And then they would just, this one time they were so pissed off at him because he would always couldn't understand English. And so without getting into what they would tell him, they'll say, learn English, but then with curse words and mix in between it. and they would write the note, throw it down like he was a dog, just threw it down, and then he would take it after working 3 jobs, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, open Hitler's dictionary and start transcribing, the message. One of the messages was learn effing English. And so imagine coming home, looking at your trailer house, no hot water, being belittled by your managers every single day for years, and then finding the courage to be a good dad. And I just, after he passed away, I knew this is what he had to deal with. And this is why I started Somebody Place too, just because I believe we got to do better than that.
Yeah.
And to what he has gone through as my father, and then to lose his life through cancer, the pain, and we don't hear about that. I think if we can hear more of those stories of like these impacts that it's doing to us years down, and we can teach our kids to be better. And I think this education, like what Evelyn was talking about, this telling more stories so we can understand our cultures better. And I think that will stop. And I really believe kindness is the way. Violence isn't, but man, we are so angry. A lot of us are angry.
Mike, I want to add. Oh, I'm sorry, Evelyn.
No, and I think that's what I love about Mike's startup is it is really resonated with me, because his whole thing is one kind gesture can change someone's perception and can change someone's life. And that really resonates, especially in a time like this, in the environment that we're in. It's like one kind gesture per day.
Yeah, that's a great point, Mike. I want to ask you about that. I mean, the things you described, literally it kind of brought tears to my eyes. I'm really sorry about your father's passing as well.
Okay.
You've been through so many traumas, right? And talking about talking about your parents' stories, the daily trauma. Honestly, I'm kind of shocked that you're not a mean, angry person, honestly, right? Because you kind of, where do you find the strength and the will to put kindness first and to be empathetic? What is that about for you? And tell us a little bit more about your mission, if you would.
The last 3 years have been a tumultuous one at best. And going through a divorce, it started there where my ex-wife cheated with her, it's like a big story, but then I went down this path of like forgiving her and like innately, like just, I know that she's a great person. We all make mistakes. I think that's what started this path, because we're human. None of us are perfect. None of us are. And but then we're so quick to judge as a society. If you do one bad thing, we gross generalize your entire nationality because, and I have this experience. I know it's true, 100% true. Every Asian will do this. And it's such a fallacy. It's such a lie in terms of who we are as a human being. And then after kind of going through the last couple of years have been super traumatic for me. 6 people with cancer. It was like a bad Korean drama, and it was my dad first. Then my sister-in-law got her breast cancer back. And then it was my good friend of my ex-wife and I. We saw her take her last breath. And then 2 months later, it was my grandma that passed away. Then my mom got cancer the next month. And then my friend later down in 2019 got brain cancer and she passed away. And so for 4 people passing away, and it was surreal. I saw my mom, my dad, and my sister-in-law at the hospital at the same time, all for cancer at the same time in the same building. And I didn't really understand like how bad this actually was until 2020 hit, Black Lives Matters hit, COVID hit, lost my business, had a breakup with my then girlfriend, and then trying to salvage what was left of me and trying to figure out, okay, well, what's the way? And then this was like, I need something else besides my own grit, and I need Jesus, and I need him to come into my life. And for the longest time, I never had a good relationship. And so when he came back into my life, I think that's when I was like, okay, I have a deeper purpose. There's a reason why I'm going through so much trauma, and it's to make this world better. And it's to selfishly, if I was a kid again, how would I have wanted my experiences to be like? And it's through kindness. And kindness doesn't wear khaki pants and a tie anymore. It looks like us. It's cool. And I want that to be the premise again. I want to relive my youth through some other kid's eyes And if I can help them get through identity issues of being transgender or being gay or being Black American or being Asian, I want to make sure that they feel like they're worthy of being a human being with all their flaws. And that's where Somni Place comes in for me. And interviewing 1,000 people by myself right now, because I want them to know that I'm giving them space, that their story matters to me. And those smallest things that have been kind for them has transformed their lives. And it's almost like just giving them a chance, giving them breath, giving them an opportunity and hope. And they're VPs, they're changing the world. And it's like, it's so amazing, you know, and it's such a beautiful thing to experience, how one small thing could really shift the culture and really change the life. And that's my mission. And I want to really take it to the next level. So we'll see where it goes.
Mike, I actually like what you said of, you know, seeing things as a child, because I think children are the perfect example of how we should be. We should look at it from curious. We don't see color. We don't see differences. It's like you just love everyone. And I love that. It's the innocence of it.
Yeah, spot on. Ben, sorry to hijack everything, but then Evelyn's like dropping bombs right now because it's so pointed. And I thank you so much for the compliments to Evelyn. It means a lot. But as a kid, we're sponges. We're taught.
Yep.
We're taught the things that we see, and we wonder where the 7-year-old is getting so hateful. And it's because the environment, the school circle they're around, the TV, all these things have influence in some way, and we need to show up for them, you know. And so then we can stop that generational damage that keeps telling that same story over and over, and these labels are persistent, you know.
Yep, exactly. And I think even just teaching your kids, teaching your nephews, teaching anyone that will listen, we're all human, regardless of what we look like, what color we have. We're all human and treating each other with respect.
Yeah, we've got some comments coming in. I just want to honor some of the people that have kind of stopped by with some of these comments. This is needed, and thank you for sharing this. Tim says, as a parent, it is important for me to make sure I'm not an example of white silence.
Thanks,
for
Tim.
Sure. You know, I think that's important too. You know, Mike, when you were telling, you know, stories of, you know, being in kindergarten or in school or whatever, and going through these things, you know, that's another thing that kind of like changed this conversation for me too, right? Because my oldest son's gonna be 6, and thinking of him being in a vulnerable situation or being picked on or being beat up or whatever would break my heart. And to think about somebody else's kid being picked on or beat up or ridiculed, whatever, breaks my heart, you know, makes it super real. And I would, you know, love your thoughts on how we can make our kids better than maybe we are, you know. I think truly that is actually the American dream, is that our kids are actually have a better life than we do, right? Mm-hmm. So we got a couple more people talking about their kids as well, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on how we can do this. Sarah Buck says, in the UK it's called banter, a new way of not calling out bullying. My teen is much more aware that banter hurts.
That's true.
A new way of not calling out bullying. So they're actually kind of like making bullying okay.
Accepted. Yeah, it's acceptable. It's yeah, it is. Banter is, there's good banter and there's bad banter that's bullying.
So we're blurring the line. So we created this line of bullying, and now we're re-blurring it.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
That's scary. Let's see here. We got a Sandra Clary thanking Evelyn there for bringing awareness.
I think one of the things that I've learned is, you know, I was told, you know, blend in, just work hard. I'm telling my kid to speak up.
Heidi saying, I'm personally still learning how to speak up for myself as well as others. It's hard to tell someone, a friend, what you said made me feel uncomfortable. This is something I'm dealing with right now, actually, where I am in a position where I need to have a conversation with somebody that said something that was not right. And I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it a lot, but I need to do it. I have to do it. My friends are looking at me like, Ben, if not you, who's going to do it?
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know. Find somebody. I don't want to do it. Like, I don't want to have this conversation.
Be the change, man. Be the change.
Like, you're the guy that says that people need to talk about these things. I'm like, I know, but I don't want to talk about it. It's like, it's a real thing. Like,
I think go from it from kindness, as Mike said. Just lead with kindness. I always start of, hey, I love you. I just got to tell you that this isn't cool. Like, what you said wasn't cool. I love you, and I just want to let you know because I want you to grow as a person.
Mike, any advice? Thanks, Evelyn. I appreciate it. I love you.
I mean, you're the voice, Ben. I think, yesterday when you said, you're like, I'm here for a purpose, and maybe this is your purpose.
No. It's like, Mike, it's like pass this cup before me, right? It's like, how do I get out of this situation without having to actually say anything about it? But it doesn't go away if you don't, right? I mean, this is what we're here for, right? So, Mike, any advice on how we correct our friends and acquaintances on these things?
Yeah, I think if you think about perspective again, bringing that back up, and if your friend, if you met them and was like, hey, dude, what's wrong with you? If you met them with that kind of hostility, they're going to pull back and they're not going to want to have that crucial conversation with you. But if you lean in with curiosity and go, hey, I'm just curious, why did you say that? And just really give them a safe space too. Because maybe they don't understand, maybe they don't really get what they're saying, or maybe they didn't have that wherewithal to go, you know what, you're right, I didn't see it that way, and I see how that can impact. And I think leaning in that way can really disarm a lot of people who may feel triggered. And even for the ones that are spewing hateful rhetoric, I think they only know what they know. And I want to reach them somehow and to let them know that, you don't have to be so angry, because it's also hurting you too. Because you're holding in so much resentment and anger. It's driving you crazy. Like, you have this one life to live it beautifully, just laugh more and love more. And how do we get there? But I think it's through those that kindness as a construct, and just, it doesn't have to be super structured. It could just be a friend talking to you, but having pure curiosity, go like, hey man, like, I love you, like what everyone was saying, like, I love you, bro, like, but let's have a conversation, because that kind of made me feel certain ways, and I want to know why. And like what Heidi was saying earlier, I think we're all trying to figure out how to navigate the situation. This is brand new for all of us in a way, and then to see my mom yesterday, I took her to Froyo because I was feeling in my feelings. I needed something, like an excuse to take her out. And so we went to go get Froyo, but then there was all these kids in the front of this Froyo place, and she was scared. I was like, Mom, let's get out. She was like, let's go to another one. Is there another one around here? I was like, why? I looked out. I was like, is it because of they're not wearing a mask? She was like, yeah, it's because of the mask. And I was like, is it? Are you scared because all the news that you're watching about the hate? She was like, well, yeah, I don't want you to get like in a fight for me. And it's like, if someone says something, I know what you're gonna do. You're gonna try to protect me. And I was like, Mom, we have liberty, we have rights, we can go there. It's fine. And she just adamantly would not get out of the car. So I went somewhere else. But that also made me frustrated, and it made me hurt that my mom, who's the quietest, she won't harm a fly. And she's so scared to get out of the car to get Froyo at 5 p.m. And it's heartbreaking for me, because I love her to death. She's my role model, but she's scared.
Yeah.
Mike, can I ask you a question out of my own curiosity here?
Absolutely.
Were those kids? You said they were kids outside of the Froyo place. Were they white? Was it a mixed race of kids?
Yeah, they were white, and and then this is an education point for me to my mom as well, right? Because I have friends, white, black, it doesn't matter to me, and it's like I see the rainbow. I love Skittles when I was growing up, by the way. It's like a fun fact, but I think when we don't have these, when we take an opportunity, we let it go by. I think this is it's a systemic. We see it, we feel it. And even for my mom, I don't want her to talk in gross generalizations and go, oh, white people hate us. I go, no. Racist people hate us. Right. That's the difference. And I'm leaning in with her with that too.
And I asked that question. I know it's a sensitive question, and I wasn't trying to frame your story, but I wanted to draw something out for my white friends. I want people to understand that white people can be scary to people. I don't think that white people know that we're scary. Okay. I think that white people look at other races and say, oh, they're scary. Well, guess what? We're scary too. And I think that we need to understand that we're scaring people. And I don't think what most of us want to be scaring people, but I think that we're scaring people, and we need to understand this is not something we can be quiet about, because it affects us, whether or not we even know it or want to deal with it. Kind of going back to my point earlier about wanting to deal with it. Like we're in this whether we like it or not. And we need to go out of our way to be kindness, because our mere presence is starting to scare people because of our silence on these issues in the past. And I just want to, this is kind of a call to action for us out there. And I just want to encourage us to be vocal and let people know where we stand. Because I'm pretty sure your mom wouldn't have been scared if they were holding, stop Asian hate signs. She'd be like, okay, cool, let's get some froyo. These are my people, right? Like, you know what I mean? We need to be overt about where we stand on these things right now.
Yeah. Evelyn, do you mind if I chime in here?
Yeah, no, go for it. I think, go for it. I'm loving your stories, Mike, because I think it's very unique, and it's your story. So I love hearing it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate you. I wanted to touch on that because when you talk about fear, with what Trump did, and as a person, as a human being, I don't want harm for Donald Trump either. But the hateful rhetoric that he did around the Kung flu, the China virus, it was very hurtful. And so when my mom sees a Trump flag and it's like a Republican flag, and it's just I supported Trump, and it's just broad in the open so everyone could see, there is a fear there that maybe they look at us differently. Maybe they believe in that Asians are the cause of coronavirus, and we should, they're going to do something to us. And my mom actually said a few things about that. But what I do love, and to Ben, to your point, my neighbor, or my mom's neighbor across the street, had a big sign that said, "We supported and we donated to Trump." And so that already made me feel certain ways. And I was like, I wonder what that means. But then I started waving to him as I drove off, not sarcastically, but I waved, and I started waving. He started waving back. And I also have, I'm a liberal, but then I have Republican views in terms of certain things, and I think it's fine. And I think another thing that we've been seeing is that once you're a Republican or Democrat, it's this far left or far right, and we're just really
there's nothing in between anymore. It's nothing in between.
Yeah,
and I think I'm like your mom, because if I see someone with a Trump sticker in their car, I want to park as far away as possible, because I just don't want trouble, because I don't know what's going to happen. But I do need to have that thing of, not everyone's the same.
Yeah, and to Ben, to your point, and just finish it off here, is that I love your call to action, and I think we can both lean in from both sides to really understand that we're just humans with ideas, and these ideas can differ, but we can still love each other even though we differ on ideas. And I think that's a really strong thing to start breaking those labels of Republican flag.
We got a new addition to the show.
We do.
Nice.
Hi.
Hi. That's awesome. That's awesome. Hello. Teach them young, right? Teach them young. This is wonderful. We got some comments coming in. A lot of support here. Heidi just checked out Some Neat Place. How can people support, by the way, Mike? Let's give people an opportunity here. How can people support you and what you're doing? Sounds like a cool thing.
Heidi, thank you so much for looking that up, and I appreciate the kind words. It means a lot. I love when I see comments like this, because it kind of gives me more hope. I think if I can touch one person, I've done a lot already, and I think that's so important for me to understand. And if you guys want to support, we created videos around some of the Asian perspectives, and just kind of go through to our Instagram at Some Neat Place, and just look at the stories. And I just literally been going up to random strangers, white, black, doesn't matter. And I've been trying to understand how kindness has shifted their life. And I want a good place. I want to hear stories that inspire me, because I see too much hate in the world. And so I need a little bit of positivity. So if you guys want to support it any way, please come on Instagram, share the stories. I don't even care if you follow me. I really don't care. But if you can take kindness away and start having conversations with one another, and just do one kind thing a day in your circle, start influencing people. And I think that will shift the narrative. And I'll be forever grateful, because it's going to impact me. And if I have future kids like Evelyn's little baby girl that just popped up, I want to feel that this world's a little bit better. And if we can all do something about it every single day, just one thing all of us can do that doesn't cost any money, I love that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Elizabeth, would you put the website in the comments there? Link it in the comments.
It's absolutely fabulous. When I met Mike, I went to the website, and it motivated me to speak up some more, and just gives me hope that we can be better and we can be kind. And even when Mike said about convicts, the storytelling and the videos, it's very heartfelt. Thank
you for that, Elizabeth. Thank you so much too. And you know, the whole thing that I did with convicts. Convicts are like 3 Aussie brothers from Australia with the accents that I want personally, because I fell in love with their accents. You know, but then a beautiful thing about those guys is, like, I called them and said, let's create content, guys. I'm triggered, and they're like, fly to LA. Let's do it. When? Tomorrow. And I flew out, and they're so supportive, and their whole branding is, we're going to create troublemakers for a better world. And it's taking an old antiquated label of troublemakers and convicts and flipping it to make it look good. And so I love all of that, because we're all 3 of us, Ben, Evelyn, and for me too, we're changing labels. We're telling different stories. And I think we all have that ability to do it. We have that power to do it. And so I'm just blessed to be here, blessed that Evelyn reached out to me. But it does give me hope. It does give me hope that we can change these labels. And I'm a troublemaker for life now, because I'm going to be a troublemaker in a good way. So it's kind of cool.
That was John Lewis, right? Good Trouble. You know, he talked about Good Trouble. That's when came out of the civil rights movement. And rest in peace. Shout out John Lewis. Was arrested like 30 times trying to make the world a better place, right? And we, I've been dealing with this too, about getting loud, right? Getting loud about our purpose, and what are we here for? What are we really trying to accomplish? And I appreciate you both getting loud today about this purpose. I want to give you the opportunity to just kind of close this with a final thought. Evelyn and then Mike.
Yeah. For me, it's reach out to someone, ask them if they're okay. Reach out to an Asian friend, reach out to a Black friend, reach out to an American, a white friend, ask them how they're doing, ask them if they're okay. But most of all, I think if you see something that's happening, you don't agree with it, stand up for that. Make your voice heard and support each other.
That's awesome. Thank you, Evelyn. Mike?
I want to leave everyone here with something. Just thank you for being here, just leaning in and listening to us. I think that's already doing a lot. And I think if you have an opportunity to have conversations, just like our man Tim was saying too, he's learning about his whiteness, and it's just kind of leaning in and telling stories and trying to be an advocate. And I think even if you don't post on social media, even if you're not going there and sharing like 20 posts a day and saying, AAPI, we support, stop Asian hate. If you're having these conversations with your kids, that's where it starts. And then, like you mentioned it too, we start them young, and you're doing that work. And I think if you're having those conversations, it's extremely helpful, even if you don't see it. But then if you have that opportunity to lean in and be curious, meet it with kindness, with everyone, including your circle, to people you don't know. And I think it will change this world.
That's wonderful, Mike. And one thing you said, Mike, that I'll kind of close with is wave at everybody. Go out of your way to wave at people, because people don't know where you stand. And it's really important that we're overt about our kindness. We're overt about our inclusivity, and we're welcoming, so that we don't leave anything to the imagination, and that we're one day we can all eat some froyo together and not even worry about it. Yep. So nice. I love it. Wave at your neighbors. Wave at people. I mean, it's so easy to do. It's this. Hey, smile, right? So, Mike, Evelyn, big wave to you. I love all you out there. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for all the wonderful comments, the great engagement. Thank you for the warm wishes, the empathy, and the desire to make our world a better place. Hit that like button if you haven't done so already. Feel free to share this if you think this conversation can benefit other people. Go check out Mike at Some Neat Place on Facebook, and the Instagram and the website's all in the comments. Shout out to everybody that was participating today. Evelyn, thank you so much for putting
Of
this
course.
together and for letting your voice be heard as well. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you,
care,
guys.
everybody.
Bye, guys.
Thanks so much. Take care. God